Good morning, Greg. Welcome to Mind at the Table. I'm so excited to have you here today and, to really break down the data connectivity that's needed to feed founders and executives, that real-time data from multiple programs that we've talked about across the organization that will feed in and allow them to make that quick and effective decision-making. Also excited because really we're just kicking off our special mini sessions today, and I'm excited to introduce Deck Decisionware that you're going to give us some insights into, and then we'll also just plant some seeds for the future episodes we're going to discuss together about all of the products, SaaS products that you've built around that. So Greg, welcome to the show. Greg Campbell, founder of Deck Decisionware.
Thanks for having me, Toby. I appreciate it.
Let's get right into it then. For people hearing about Deck for the first time, what is Deck Decisionware and why does it matter right now?
Yeah, great question, Toby. So when I founded SpeakerPoint in 2005, we've been a technology company, a software company ever since. And for the first 8 years or so of life, we were custom building applications for customers. So you can think of, something like a login that needs to happen over and over on a web application. We were rebuilding that over and over. So in that 2012 range, when we started to build out Deck Decisionware, what we lovingly refer to as Deck, what we realized is that this could really be a modular application with, for example, a login module that gets tested time and time again as we build out these applications for customers or ourselves, and gets better and better over time. And that also allows us to sort of think about these modules as Lego blocks. And when a customer comes to our table and is looking at building a piece of software, we're able to snap together those Lego blocks into a application that quickly gets to, let's say, 90% of their requirements. And then the last services piece is that last 10% where we close the gap between those Lego bricks and what the requirements actually are. So think of this as a purpose-built application, but very different in that our modules allow us to get to the end goal much quicker than a normal purpose-built application.
Yeah, that's great to understand. What I hear from a lot of businesses that we work with at Hyperion is there's a lot of great tools out there, but getting them to talk together just is really difficult to make happen. And so really a lot of business owners are only working with half the picture. They've got the data, but they can only see half the data. And so that makes it really difficult to make decisions, and or you just keep investing in new programs to gather more data, but you're not collating that data. So is that kind of what made you want to build this? Or maybe let me open it up for you a bit. What made you want to build this?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, Toby. There's been this whole movement away from monolithic ERP applications. And when I say ERP, enterprise resource planners, like you've heard of SAP and Microsoft Dynamics and all of these other applications. And typically they're trying to be everything to an enterprise, but that's just not the case. There's special applications out there that are purpose-built for very interesting problems. For example, Salesforce.com is a great CRM, customer relationship manager, and there's all kinds of other tools out there that lend themselves perfectly to business. Now, the way you introduce this question is absolutely the case, where each of those very purpose-built applications are great at what they do for a particular business, and they don't talk to each other in lots of cases. So, when we, even previous to Deck, we were thinking about, how to pull all those data together, all of that data together from the different silos that they sit in. And that's really where, partly Deck came from, as being able to bind all those together. Or, they called this back in 2015, 2016, the unbundling problem. As you move away from an ERP system, you're unbundling that into these silos, and Deck kind of bundles them back together in a way. So yeah, that's kind of how we thought about maneuvering out to Deck.
Interesting. I get, and I won't dive into this too deep right now, but I get the impression that if it all been built on Deck in the first place, they'd all communicate effectively anyways, and Deck has the ability to build all of those systems out. And I won't press you on that right now, but that's just, from what we've talked about in the past and what you said today, I think that could be the case, and you can expand on that if you want. But I really understand what you're saying. There's tools out there for dashboards, analytics, integrations, but Deck is different in of itself. You help create something that can not only pull data together, but actually think with that data it's gathering. So it's not just collating, it's giving information and insights that it's gathering from the data. Can you maybe dive into that a little bit deeper for us, Greg?
Yeah, that's another great question, Toby. So in the insurance industry, they live and die by this measurement that they call IBNR. So it stands for incurred but not reported. And if you're an insurance company that's insuring lots of personal property, houses and apartment buildings and stuff like that, if an area that you have a lot of customers in is, let's say, hit by a hurricane, then you're immediately doing calculations offline. You're immediately doing calculations to try to understand in the coming days how much you're going to be exposed, how much you're going to need to pay out based on those insurance policies. So that's really what we're talking about here with this IBNR, incurred but not reported yet, measurement. So in a situation like that, where an insurance company is exposed in a particular area that just got hit by a major storm, that's an offline problem in a way. It's not a real-time problem, but it's an offline problem that actuaries are able to sit and do a bunch of calculations. Now, another type of insurance company is one that is providing group benefits. So your company might buy group benefits to ensure that their employees have a good prescription plan and they're able to go to the doctor and the dentist and go for massages and things like that. So there is a really interesting problem for these insurance companies that provide group benefits. That IBNR calculation is much more real time, and Deck, when we do business with a company like that, a third party administrator, or even directly with a group benefits plan, we're able to use 10 years of historical data that they'd have in various systems and pull that together to run the algorithms that need to calculate the live IBNR values. And again, this is where the regulatory bodies can get very grumpy with an insurance company if they're not carrying enough liquid cash to cover those payouts. So it's a very important measurement, it's a very important piece of data for an insurance company to have.
That's awesome. Let's talk a little bit too, maybe, Greg, about what this unlocks. You've already built 4 SaaS solutions, I believe, on top of Deck, and for various very different industries. That says a lot. It's doing this work not just as a one-use tool, but really it's an engine, or I think you've described it as a platform. Talk a little bit more around that for us.
Yeah, platform or foundation is what we call it. And, you mentioned the 4 products that we currently have, but since 2012, everything that we've done has been on top of Deck. So all of the custom solutions since then are on top of the Deck platform. And whether that's, again, a enterprise application that we've done for an enterprise customer, or we've done business with software companies as well, where we're providing the software that they sell to their customers, and they sort of white label our software. So not only do we have 4 of our own products, and you're right, in very different industries, but pretty much every product that we've custom built for every customer with Deck is in different industries. So we do have experience in lots of different industries, which allows me to use a lot of different language. You get used to the language of your customers, kind of thing, and I'm in the most fascinating position there is, because I get to see deep into many different industries and get deep information there. So it's very cool that way.
Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot here. 4 SaaS solutions today, and I think developing the SaaS solutions is relatively new in the life cycle and approach that your business is operating in. You know, a year from now, Greg, if we're having the same conversation, is there going to be more than 4 SaaS solutions?
Well, we want to concentrate on on 2 of the SaaS solutions that we believe are the unicorn solutions. However, that being said, what I really like about how we do business is the ability to have the dev team, the development team, constantly be challenged by new things, and it allows them to sharpen their skills. So from that perspective, Toby, I think you're right. If something interesting does come along, we're able to, tack in a bit of a different direction from the point of view, if nothing else, of allowing the dev team to have a really sharp saw, as it will, to sharpen that saw to be able to not only lend that to SpeakerPoint and the group of companies and the products that we bring, but also it helps their careers off into the future. And quite frankly, I really do think about my employees. I take off my corporate hat and put on I don't know if I'd call it a friend hat, but certainly a colleague hat, and think about what they need to be thinking about for their long-term career.
Yeah, and I would guess, and I won't put words in your mouth, so I'll let you respond, but I would think the dev team gets excited when you come to them and say, hey, a client has this problem, can we solve it?
Yeah, I think like most dev teams, they get a little nervous, especially with the crazy salesperson going off and selling something that nobody knows how to do quite yet. I mean, the right person looks at that as a challenge and jumps out of bed to meet that challenge, and that's who I surround myself with. But it's also a little stressful for sure. But that's the industry we're in, so so be it, I suppose.
Greg, thanks for introducing us to the platform or the foundation, Deck Decisionware, today. I'm really looking forward to our next episodes where we're going to dive deeper into some of your SaaS solutions and how that how that can be implicated and used in the supply chain, to workforce, to ESG, and really have you guide us down those paths on how you're helping to make business, especially business analytics and data, easily accessible and more utilizable for businesses. Smart decisions aren't really about getting more data. They're about getting the right curated data from all of the sources and in front of the right people at the right time. And it seems that's what Deck does.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Toby. I'm looking forward to the rest of the series, and thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
If you're a business owner, operator, or investor who's tired of flying blind, follow along. The next few episodes might change how you see data forever.